Can you even imagine it? The day that was supposed to be the happiest in your daughter's life, her wedding day turning into the cruelest moment of your own? The moment that crushes the very mother who gave up her youth to raise her child? Inside the glittering ballroom of the Charleston Yacht Club, under the glow of crystal chandeliers, with champagne glasses clinking and polite smiles flashing across the room, I, Margaret Hayes, 57 years old, suddenly heard words that felt like a knife straight to my heart. My daughter, Chloe, standing there in her radiant white gown, eyes blazing with anger, shouted in front of everyone, "If you really want to give me a wedding gift, then disappear from my life. You're nothing but a burden, an embarrassment to me." The whole room froze. The music stopped. Silverware clattered to a halt against wine glasses. Dozens of eyes turned toward me, some stunned, some secretly satisfied, especially the Walker family, Chloe's soon-to-be in-laws. Just a minute earlier, I had been holding the seating chart, explaining where Grandma could sit so she'd be in a quieter corner. Now my hands were trembling, clutching the same piece of paper, while my world fell apart. I had given my entire life to raise that girl, working overnight shifts at the hospital, mopping floors at a diner just to scrape together her tuition, sewing her prom dresses by hand, packing her school lunches, paying for tutoring sessions, and pushing my own dreams aside so she could have a brighter future. And in return, at the most important moment of her life, I was repaid with the cruelest gift of all: public rejection in front of the world. But if you think I broke down, sobbed, and ran away in shame, you're wrong. That was the moment I woke up. The instant my heart shattered was the same instant I realized something. It was time to give my daughter the gift she demanded: my disappearance. But not in the way she imagined. Stay with me. Because what I did next didn't just shock Chloe and the entire Walker family. It changed my life forever. I left the ballroom with legs that barely felt like my own. Every step on the polished marble floor echoed back at me, each sound a cruel reminder of the humiliation I had just endured. Behind me, I could hear the muffled laughter, the whispers, some laced with pity, others with mocking delight. They pierced me like needles. But outwardly, I kept my composure. None of them deserved the satisfaction of seeing me break. Out in the open air, I paused on the balcony overlooking the harbor, where the lights from the yachts shimmered across the water. The salty night breeze stung my eyes. Maybe it was tears, but I refused to let them fall. I had already shed too many tears in my life: when my husband walked out and left me with a baby, when I tucked unpaid bills into drawers, when I sat alone in the hospital parking lot after yet another exhausting night shift. But not this time. Tears would only weaken me. And right now, I needed strength. My mind drifted back over the years. At 29, I carried my little girl out of our cramped apartment the day her irresponsible father declared that family life just isn't for me. I worked full-time as a nurse, then picked up extra shifts at a fast food joint near the hospital. On freezing Charleston nights, I threw on an old sweater and bent over greasy tables, scrubbing them clean, only to put on a white uniform the next morning and smile reassuringly at patients. I clipped coupons to save a couple of dollars for Chloe's formula. I turned down invitations from coworkers for weekend trips because every overtime shift could buy her another book. I can still remember the sweat on my forehead, the calluses on my hands, the long nights spent sewing her gowns so she wouldn't feel out of place among the wealthy kids at her private school. I never complained. I believed those sacrifices would one day be repaid with love and gratitude. But the reality was harsher. Chloe grew up spoiled, slowly learning to see my efforts as nothing more than her birthright. The house I bought with my father's inheritance, I let her and her fiancé move in as soon as they got engaged. She never once asked, "Mom, whose name is on the deed?" She simply assumed it was hers for the taking. The lavish wedding with a live orchestra, imported flowers, and a custom gown from New York, I covered every cost. And yet, in Chloe's eyes, I was nothing more than a burden, a source of shame to be hidden from Ethan's wealthy family. That night, back in my modest little home, I sat alone in the quiet kitchen. Familiar things surrounded me. The old kettle, the faded curtains, the wooden chairs I had bought at a thrift shop 20 years earlier. They were simple, but at least they were mine. And in that silence, one truth became painfully clear. To my daughter, I was no longer a mother. I was a shadow, something to erase so she could shine. And maybe it was time to give her exactly what she wanted. But I wouldn't leave in disgrace. I would leave on my own terms, and in doing so, I would give Chloe a lesson she would never forget. The next morning, as golden sunlight poured through the kitchen window, I was already seated at the table. But instead of unpaid bills like in the old days, a thick stack of documents lay in front of me. The catering contract, the deposit receipt for the band, the rental agreement for the venue, even the advance payment for the photographer. Every single page bore one name, Margaret Hayes. I stared at them, and a strange feeling rose inside me. For years I had signed papers only for Chloe's sake, but this time was different. Every signature was no longer proof of sacrifice, it was proof of who had truly carried this family. And I knew these papers would become my most powerful weapon when the truth came to light. I picked up the phone and called the wedding planner, the busy woman Chloe loved bragging about to her friends. "Margaret, you're calling awfully early," she mumbled, still half asleep. I spoke calmly. "I'm calling to cancel the entire event today. Check the terms of the contract. My name is on every payment, and I'm exercising my right to cancel." There was silence on the other end, then a nervous pause. Are you sure? The ceremony is just hours away." I cut her off, firm and steady. "I'm sure. Do it now. I'll take full responsibility for the penalty fees." One by one, I called every vendor, caterers, florists, the band, the photographer. Disappointed sighs, angry remarks, even pleading voices filled the line. But in the end, every call ended with the same word: canceled. By 9 a.m., an entire $70,000 wedding had evaporated, leaving only the official cancellation papers in my hands. And instead of feeling regret, I felt a strange lightness spread through my chest. The burden I had carried for so many years was finally set down. Then the doorbell rang, sharp and furious. I knew it could only be one person. I opened the door to find Chloe standing there, makeup smudged, hair disheveled, her whole body shaking with rage. "What are you doing, Mom? I called you all night. Why didn't you pick up? Everyone's waiting at the church. You need to get ready now." I looked her straight in the eye, my voice steady and low. "There is no church. The wedding has been canceled." "What?" She froze, her mouth hanging open as if she had just heard the most absurd thing in the world. "Are you insane? This is the most important day of my life. You have no right to ruin it." I didn't flinch. "I do have that right, because everything you thought was yours I paid for. And today, I decided to stop. You wanted me out of your life? Fine, but before I disappear, I'll take back what's mine." Chloe trembled, her face pale with disbelief. At that moment, the rumble of an engine grew louder outside. A sleek SUV pulled up at the curb. The Walker family stepped out, their expressions tense. Ethan rushed forward, caught between panic and confusion, and in that instant, I knew the real confrontation was about to begin. The moment the door shut behind me, the air in the living room grew heavy. Chloe stormed in, her high heels striking the wooden floor like gunshots. Ethan followed close behind, his face caught between confusion and dread, while his parents, Richard and Olivia Walker, stood tall, as if they had just entered a courtroom instead of a single mother's modest home. Chloe's voice cracked with rage. "What the hell are you doing? Margaret Hayes, you've ruined my life. You had no right." I didn't answer right away. Instead, I walked calmly to the dining table, where I had laid out a neat stack of thick folders. Every document was arranged like evidence in a trial. I lifted my head and met Chloe's eyes. "No, right? Look closely. Here's the catering contract whose name is on it. Here's the invoice from the event company who paid. Here's the tuition for 4 years at Northeastern. And here, the confirmation of every loan payment for law school in Boston who covered it all." Chloe blinked rapidly, her face draining of color. Ethan leaned down, his brow furrowing as he studied the papers. Olivia stepped forward, lifting one of the invoices, her dark red lips pressed into a hard line. "All of this is under your name?" I nodded, my voice calm but sharp as ice. "Every cent. For over 30 years I worked 2 jobs, saved every dollar, cut away every personal need. I paid over $300,000 in tuition, nearly $80,000 for a wedding, and today, Chloe tells me she wants me gone." Chloe's voice broke, her eyes brimming with tears. "No, that's not what I meant. I just wanted everything to look perfect in front of the Walkers." I cut her off. "Perfect? By turning your mother into a pitiful charity case? By letting them believe the Walkers paid for everything, while I supposedly chipped in a token amount? You stood by while they assumed I was the poor, desperate burden clinging to my daughter when in truth, it was me who made sure you never lacked a thing. Ethan staggered back, as if a wall had just collapsed inside him. His voice was hoarse as he stared at Chloe. You told me your parents covered most of the expenses. You swore your mother couldn't afford it. Was that all a lie? Chloe sobbed, but her tears too late now didn't move me. Olivia folded her arms, her gaze cutting like a blade. My son, we've been deceived. And by whom? By the very woman you intended to marry. Richard cleared his throat, his face stern and unyielding. If these numbers are true, then this marriage began with deception. And no one in the Walker family can accept that. The room froze solid. I looked at my daughter, the same child I once sang lullabies to, the little girl I carried through fevers. Now she sat trembling, makeup streaked, clutching an invoice as if it could anchor her to a reality she refused to face. I drew in a slow breath, then delivered my final words, clear, cold, and irrevocable. You told me to disappear from your life. Today, I give you exactly that. But before I go, I leave you with this truth. You were never a victim of circumstance. You are the product of indulgence and lies. And now, you'll live with the consequences. In the silence, the wall clock ticked, each beat sharp and merciless. No one spoke, because they all knew the charade was over. After the Walker family left, the house sank into a suffocating silence. I remained at the dining table, staring at the scattered documents no one dared to touch. Chloe still sat there, head bowed, shoulders trembling. She muttered something under her breath, maybe late regret, maybe just the terror of losing everything. I no longer cared to decipher it. I rose, gathered the files, and slid them neatly into a leather bag. My voice came out steady, deliberate. You have 1 day to pack your things. This house will be sold on Monday. Use the time you have left. Chloe's head snapped up, her bloodshot eyes wide with fear and despair. Mom, you can't just leave me like this. I only wanted to be accepted. I shook my head slowly. Acceptance can't be bought with lies, Chloe. You're grown. You've had every opportunity. Now it's time you learn what responsibility feels like. With that, I turned and walked out of the living room that once overflowed with memories. My footsteps echoed firm, unshaken. For the first time in years, I felt the weight of endless demands slipping away. The next morning, I lifted my old suitcase, loaded it into my 10-year-old sedan, and set off south. Through the windshield, the streets and rows of trees slid away behind me. I never looked back. Charleston, with all its bitter memories, was now in the past. Ahead of me lay Savannah, where I would begin again. Crossing the bridge into the coastal city, a rush of salty wind from the Atlantic swept through, carrying a strange sense of release. I stopped at a small cottage tucked beside a stand of pines, facing the sea. Its blue-painted wooden walls were weathered with age, but when I stepped onto the porch and heard the waves crashing against the rocks, I knew. This was the start of something new. That evening, I sat on the porch, watching the crimson sunset stretch across the water. In my hands rested a small wooden box. Inside lay a single photograph of Chloe as a child, her innocent smile, her clear, bright eyes, and a slip of paper I had written myself. Love cannot exist without respect. Unconditional sacrifice is not love, it is a chain. Learn to respect yourself, and others will respect you too. Tomorrow, that box would be delivered to Chloe. I didn't expect an apology. I didn't hope for reconciliation. But maybe, one day, she would look back and understand. Every choice has consequences, and self-respect is the greatest gift anyone can possess. Night fell, and the moonlight shimmered over the waves. I closed my eyes, breathing in the briny air. For the first time in decades, I felt truly free. No longer a shadow standing behind someone else, no longer a burden whispered about in shame. I was simply Margaret Hayes, a woman who had finally learned to live for herself. The first days in Savannah passed slowly, but not empty. Every morning, I rose early, brewed a cup of coffee, and walked down to the shoreline. The waves rolled in steadily, carrying with them a vast, endless sound as if to remind me that life goes on, no matter who leaves or stays. Sitting on an old wooden chair I had bought at a flea market, I watched the crimson sunset sink into the horizon. Maybe all those years, I had never once given myself the chance to sit still like this. As a single mother, every moment of my life had been consumed by bills, work, responsibility. I couldn't even remember the last time I noticed the color of the evening sky. Now, with no one left to carry on my shoulders, I realized something simple. The world is far more beautiful than I ever allowed myself to see. Each wave, each seabird's cry, even the salty tang in the air suddenly, all of it felt precious. At night, I unpacked old boxes, arranging the pieces of my new life. Among the keepsakes, I found the photo albums Chloe had left behind. I turned the pages slowly, seeing her again in those moments curled in a crib, wobbling through her first steps, twirling in a tiny dress at her school recital. Each picture was a fragment, a reminder of how sacred motherhood once was. I won't deny that my heart still ached. Any mother would hurt when her own child turned away, but instead of letting that pain consume me, I chose to hold on to the good memories. They were mine, something no one could take. One afternoon, a text appeared on my phone from an unknown number. Just a few words. "Mom, I'm sorry, but where are you?" I stared at the screen for a long time, my finger hovering, my heart wavering. But in the end, I didn't reply. I knew that an apology born of fear isn't the same as true remorse. Chloe needed to face her own consequences. The next day, I walked through my new neighborhood. The people here were simple. An elderly couple tending flowers, an old black woman knitting on her porch, children laughing as they ran along the sand. They greeted me with warm smiles. No one asked about my family, my money, or whether I was worthy of belonging. That simplicity warmed me more than any lavish party ever had in Charleston. At nightfall, I lit a small candle in the living room. The house was quiet, the sea breeze rustling outside the window. I sat at the table and wrote in a journal for the first time in years. Day 12 in Savannah. I'm beginning to feel alive. Not as the mother who fought to make her daughter happy, but as Margaret, a woman learning to seek happiness for herself. When my pen stopped, a faint smile found its way to my lips. At last, I had rediscovered what I'd lost for so long, peace from within. That morning, I sat once again by the shore, a warm cup of coffee in hand, watching the sun rise slowly over the horizon. The waves rolled in, steady and patient, like time itself, reminding me that every storm eventually passes, leaving behind only what we choose to hold on to. I had chosen to let go of responsibilities that were never valued, to let go of sacrifices treated as obligations, to let go of the role I once believed was my only destiny, a mother carrying the world on her shoulders for her child. And in letting go, I didn't find emptiness. I found freedom. Perhaps the greatest lesson I learned from it all is this: love cannot exist without respect. A child may be spoiled with every material comfort, but if they never learn gratitude and respect for their parents, then every sacrifice is rendered meaningless. And a mother, no matter how deeply she loves, must never allow herself to become a shadow, a burden, or an afterthought. We all have limits, and when those limits are crossed, the bravest thing we can do is draw the line. Some will judge me, say I was cruel to cancel the wedding, to sell the house that once held our family. But those people never lived my nights. They never felt the weight of the bills, the exhaustion of endless shifts, the tears I swallowed in silence. When my daughter told me, "If you really want to give me a gift, then disappear from my life," the pain cut deeper than anything I'd ever known. But those very words opened a new truth for me. Sometimes, the most loving thing you can do is let go. I believe that one day, Chloe will look back and understand. She'll realize the house she once boasted about to her friends wasn't magic from nowhere. It was built on my sweat and tears. She'll see that every lavish party, every opportunity, every rescue from hardship carried my fingerprints. And when she understands, maybe then she'll grow. Maybe she'll learn the hardest lesson of all. No one is owed a lifetime of sacrifice. As for me, I've begun a new journey, a journey of living for myself. I cook now just to please my own taste, not to meet someone else's expectations. I read the novels I once abandoned when life grew too heavy. I'm even thinking of joining an art class by the sea, something I never dared to dream before. And if you're listening to my story, I want to leave you with this. Treasure the people who stand behind you, especially your parents. Remember that every meal, every book, every opportunity you've been given did not come from thin air. Behind them may be sacrifices never spoken, calloused hands, and silent tears. And if you are a parent, don't forget, love does not mean losing yourself. Know when to stop, when to draw the line, when to protect your own dignity. Life is too short to be spent entirely in sacrifice, waiting for gratitude that may never come. Sometimes the strongest act of love is to step away and write the next chapter of your life for yourself. If this story touched you, please click like so more people can find it. Don't forget to subscribe to this channel for the next story tales that will make you reflect, bring tears to your eyes, and sometimes even smile when you see yourself in them. And finally, share your thoughts in the comments. What would you do if you were in my place? Keep sacrificing or let go to reclaim yourself.